So Hasan Piker invited liberal Zionist propagandist Matt Duss onto his stream for a nice chat. Why Bernie's foreign policy advisor broke with DC Democrats. He even uploaded it to his channel. He never uploaded his talk with me to his channel. So this guy is Bernie's foreign policy advisor, or ever was Bernie's foreign policy advisor. Should probably ring alarm bells as to what Bernie Sanders always has been for anyone who hasn't noticed that yet. But let's look at some of Matt Duss's openly extolled stances. Matt Duss, in 2016, said that he endorses a piece that said that the anti-Israel left is pure anti-Semitism. He actually wrote a piece December 14th, 2023, while the genocide was ongoing. I remind you, at this time, I already made my video making the legal case against Israel for genocide in Gaza, saying that Israel's methods are not as extreme as Russia's, and it's very important to acknowledge that. At that point, Israel had already killed more civilians in Gaza than Russia had killed in Ukraine during the entire war. He called Palestinian resistance a far-right theocratic organization committing mass murder in the name of blood and soil nationalism. That is how this guy characterizes Palestinian resistance. And he spread the mass rape hoax. In December 2023, he said, denying the rape and sexual violence that Hamas committed on October 7th is disgusting. And then, he did a token thing. So he's using that to excuse the humanitarian catastrophe Israel is intentionally inflicting on the Palestinians. This is pure liberal Zionist bullshit. This is the Ethan Klein stance. Then he said, in May 2024, well after the mass rape hoax was fully debunked, so no excuse anymore. There was never an excuse in the first place for believing it, given that there was no evidence, but now there's certainly no excuse. Very much worth noting that the ICC includes rape and other acts of sexual violence in the list of Hamas offenses. It's very clear that these things happen, and it's ridiculous that some continue to deny it. Very confident there, isn't he? May 2024, this guy was saying this shit. There could be a world in which you invite this guy on, but you invite him on to destroy him. You invite him on to challenge him on this stuff. Not nicely either. To really grill the fuck out of him and ruin him forever. So that's what you should do with people like this. You invite him on, your first question is, so you claim that Hamas did mass rape on October 7th. So why have you never provided any evidence of that, even though you've consistently spread this genocide-enabling blood libel from the very beginning? Hey, why don't you say that Palestinian liberation is blood and soil nationalism? You pin them on this live and you get them stuttering. You debunk their entire narrative. That's the utility that these guys have. They are tools to be used. You destroy them, you upload the video of it, and then you just fucking forget about them. That's not what Hasan did here. He gave him a softball interview and promoted him. It's important to note that people like this, he's trying to break into alternative media, because someone like this is no longer of much use to the Washington DC, sort of think tank industrial complex and political advisor complex that he has mostly been involved in for his entire adult life. But this guy, you kind of have to consider that he's in this sort of in-between thing where he was a Bernie Sanders advisor. So he's going to be too progressive for the mainstream Democrats, but he's also too pro-Israel for anyone who's someone posturing, someone who's on the cusp of being consumed by the Democratic Party, entryism complex. There's not really much of a home for someone like him. He's not needed by the mainstream Democrats. He's not even needed by people like Bernie Sanders anymore, who have gone full mask-off Zionists at this point. So he needs an alternative income stream. He needs a safety net. And his way of doing that is making a podcast. So he's trying to leverage his disgusting career as a Washington, D.C. foreign policy genocider to sort of get out of that inorganic sphere where you are propped up by people with lots of money and lots of interest in genociding people in the third world for money. He's trying to get out of that by making a podcast called the Undiplomatic Podcast. And you can see they don't really get many views. This podcast is something that no one cares about. And they immediately uploaded the Hasan Piker talk highlights to their podcast channel. It's the best thing that's ever happened to them. They got fucking Hasan Piker, this big streamer, big up-and-coming, soon-to-be mainstream media personality onto their podcast. And they're ecstatic. They are so happy about this. It's the best thing that ever could have happened to their podcast. It already has 10 times more views than they usually get. So this is just irresponsible from Hasan Piker here. He did not challenge this guy. This was not an adversarial interview. It's not inviting someone on to rightfully destroy them. It's inviting someone on to promote them. That's what this was. It gets worse with this guy as well, by the way. I haven't even shown you what I think is the worst thing, which is not this. This is pretty bad, though. I was just looking through his tweets for anything on Israel, and he's this is a tweet from August 2024, in which he said, I know folks who previously served in the IDF who I'd be thrilled to have in the White House. This is someone who Hasan Piker invited onto his stream to give him a nice little boost. Here is Matt Duss going on Democracy Now!, arguing against the ceasefire in Gaza and justifying Bernie Sanders' anti-ceasefire position. Hasan Piker's latest interviewee, folks.
Matt, you worked for Senator Sanders. She pushed him on a ceasefire. He said he was for a pause, but wouldn't go so far as a ceasefire. Your thoughts?
No, I think the senator has been one of the strongest voices for a cessation of violence, for stopping the bombing. These are the words he used in his speech on the floor of the Senate a couple of weeks ago. He has been one of the strongest voices in the country.
I want to be clear as you listen to this. Remember that this is someone who Hasan Piker chose to help with his entry into the alternative media sphere. This guy is looking for an exit ramp from his career justifying Zionist atrocities, and Hasan Piker helped him with that. He's realizing that the palatability of what he offers these Democratic Party genociders is going down. He's not going to have his job forever. And his podcast sort of thing is a way to give himself an off-ramp from this career, which isn't going to be viable forever. And here he is fucking advocating against the fucking ceasefire of all things.
Raising the issue of the Palestinians who are dying. And even before October 7, he was one of the strongest voices pressing the U.S. government to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
This is liberal Zionism par excellence. I can't fucking believe that you could platform this without calling it out.
So I understand there are some of my colleagues on the left who've been pushing for, to use the word ceasefire. I get that. I think what the senator said there about the challenges of a ceasefire being negotiated with an organization like Hamas are valid. Where my focus is, and I think...
Amazing. Okay. In an interview, Matt Duss leveraged his supposed Ukrainian-American identity to say that Israel has the right and responsibility to defend its people. He also goes on fucking Bill Maher. This happened in June 2024. This fucker went on Bill Maher, and as Bill Maher did blood libel genocide propaganda painting all Palestinians as pedophiles, this guy sat there smirking and nodding. I want you to know that. I want you to know this is who Hasan Piker decided to platform and boost. And I want to say to Matt Duss, if you're watching this, I hope you are, my friend, you're never going to be allowed to have a career outside of what you're doing. We're never going to let you in. If you ever try, we will be there. Not just me, but also others. Don't even fucking try. Don't even try. Just stick to doing what you know. Justifying genocide for Zionism. Do a hard right turn, become a Republican advisor or some shit. Those are your realistic options, not this. We're not going to let you do it.
People of Gaza, by the way, if the Israelis did get rid of Hamas, they'd be doing a giant favor to the people of Gaza who hate Hamas too.
He's nodding along with that, by the way. This is him on the left, this Vaush thing. He's a lot worse than the real Vaush, by the way. I think advocating for the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza, as he did, in a very official role as well, is worse than consuming drawn child porn, as Vaush did. Unequivocally. He's worse. This Vaush lookalike is worse than the actual Vaush.
But let's just go through the lists. Because the Israelis look like us in most ways, value.
The Israelis look like us. Oh my fucking God. He's sitting next to this guy as he says this.
He's wise. Maybe we're not doing it the right way. I don't know. Religious tolerance. That doesn't exist in Gaza. You're either Muslim or an infidel, and you better be a Muslim.
Thank God this guy who just sits there, as he said, and nods along to it, was platformed by Hasan Piker and given an opportunity to rebrand. Now the genocide is too obvious, and the tides are turning against his previous positions. Something that, I will note, Hasan recently went on Noah's stream and watched one of my videos warning against. Literally a week before he did this, he watched a video that I made saying, don't let these people do this, and he's letting this guy do it.
Female freedom, free and fair elections, free speech, gay rights. Can I just finish my list of pedophilia? I'll put that under don't ask. Child brides and so forth. Equality of the sexes, I'll categorize that under don't make me fucking laugh. The fact that, these people think that this is where they should be aligned with, that these are the values that you support.
I love Matt Duss. I'm glad that this is the guy who Hasan Piker is giving an out from his soulless consulting career in Washington, D.C. This is the guy who is giving an out into like building a potential audience in the alternative media space by getting platformed by, no exaggeration, probably the biggest streamer who could, the biggest guy who could give you a shout out in this space. Because what this guy is doing is just a rebranding. It's a rebranding. He sees the tides turning when he helped this happen in the first place. He helped legitimize it. And he's trying to save himself. We can't let that happen. This guy spent, the first 30 years of his life, at least, pro-Israel, Zionist. October 7th happens, he justifies the genocide, he attacks, Palestinian resistance for it. He spreads blood libel, mass rape, stuff like that. And then 2 years later, he sees the tide turning. He's like, oh no, this is actually really bad. Zionism is bad. Shock, horror, time to break with the DC establishment or whatever. And you just let him do that, and you're like, oh, come on, but he's changed or whatever. We don't have an obligation to let these people keep having fucking media careers. We don't have an obligation to let them keep being talking heads that we have to listen to. Like, you advocate for Zionism for 30 years, and you spend, like, the first 2 years of a genocide justifying it. If you're truly repentant for that, go work in fucking McDonald's like a normal person. Get the job application going. Go work in the mines to provide restitution. Go help rebuilding Gaza as a manual laborer. This idea that we need to forgive people because they came around late or whatever, and what forgive means in these cases is like, let them have a career as like a fucking political commentator or whatever still. No. If you want to be forgiven, first thing that needs to happen is that you renounce everything that you've ever done and do something else with your life. This is not someone who should ever be given forgiveness. You can't just reward this stuff. You can't let these people rebrand and let them get away with what they did, because they'll do it again next time. So they watched my video where I was talking about how these people are going to try to rebrand. And then Hasan invites someone on who is actively attempting to do a rebrand right now.
Career. And I think with a lot of these people that are going to change their mind and try to reposition, we got to remember, we got to keep a very close record of what they said while it was happening and not let them do that. They'll try, but there should be a continuous effort to say, no.
Hasan agreed.
On October 10th, you started justifying what Israel is doing. You started weaponizing your identity to run cover for Israel and blame everything Israel's doing on Hamas, which is exactly what Israel is doing.
Or college protesters.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what you were focused on during this.
I think the only way that these grifters can ever do something that is redeemable is if they detail and identify exactly how they were paid.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good way. We need to get that out of this guy here. We need to get Matt Duss to detail exactly how and why he was paid. But he hasn't done that, so I don't know why you invited him onto your stream. He could blow the lid off all of this shit by telling us who paid him to spread genocide propaganda. As far as I'm aware, he's not even Jewish, so he doesn't even have like the ethnic solidarity thing to go with. Who paid him? I want to know. That's a good question. Why didn't you ask him that, Hasan? There's also Hasan Piker saying that Zionists should not even be allowed to be the local dog catcher. I mean, you've all seen that clip, right? But apparently they're fit to be invited onto his stream, I guess. There is certainly merit to inviting people like this on, but for a confrontational debate where you confront them and use them as vectors to show that, for example, the mass rape hoax is precisely that. And like that Zionism was always precisely what it is now, and that they assisted in allowing what is happening now to happen, so fuck them for trying to wash their hands of it now. I noticed that Israel is bad now. Previously I supported it, but I noticed that it's bad now. I didn't notice, I didn't notice with the Great March of Return. I didn't notice with the 2014 bombings that killed like 2,000 people. I didn't notice with Operation Cast Lead. I didn't notice with the Nakba. I didn't notice with anything else. Now I'm finally noticing, now that the tide is turning to a massive degree and people like me aren't going to have a job anymore soon. Finally, I'm noticing, what a coincidence that once it's potentially going to hit my bottom line. Now I'm noticing that. And this is how Hasan ends his talk with his new best friend, Matt Duss, genocidal Zionist, mass rape, 40 beheaded babies guy.
Yeah. Well, Matt Duss, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Hasan's editor, for plugging him so that everyone can go and follow him. And thank you for revealing to us that you follow him yourself as well.
This was a wonderful and enlightening conversation.
What were you enlightened by, Hasan? What were you enlightened by? I'd love to know.
I hope I didn't press you too hard on
some of these
things.
Thank you.
No, not at all.
And I hope to have you back on the broadcast soon.
All right, anytime.
Hope to have him back on soon. No different to inviting Ethan Klein onto your broadcast. So let's talk about why this is happening. There is an enlightening clip that basically summarizes the entire thesis of manufacturing consent, which I will use to sum it up here.
Is a censoring organization. Tell me how that works. You're not suggesting that proprietors phone one another up, or that many journalists get their copies spiked, as we say?
It's actually Orwell, you may recall, has an essay called Literary Censorship in England, which was supposed to be the introduction to Animal Farm, except that it never appeared, in which he points out, look, I'm writing about a totalitarian society, but in free democratic England, it's not all that different. And then he says unpopular ideas can be silenced without any force. And then he gives a two-sentence response, which is not very profound, but captures it. He says two reasons. First, the press is owned by wealthy men who have every interest in not having certain things appear. But second, the whole educational system, from the beginning on through, just gets you to understand that there are certain things you just don't say. Well, spelling these things out, that's perfectly correct. I mean, it's the first sentence is what we expand on.
This is what I don't get, because it suggests that, I mean, I'm a journalist, people like me are self-censoring.
No, not self-censoring. There's a filtering system that starts in kindergarten. It goes all the way through. And it doesn't work 100%, but it's pretty effective. It selects for obedience and subordination. And especially, I think that...
So stroppy people won't make it to positions of influence?
Behavior problems, or if you read applications to a graduate school, you see that people will tell you he's not, doesn't get along too well with his colleagues. You know how to interpret those things.
I'm just interested in this because I was brought up, like a lot of people, probably post-Watergate film and so on, to believe that journalism was a crusading craft and that there were a lot of disputatious, stroppy, difficult people in journalism. And I have to say, I think I know some of them.
Well, I know some of the best and best-known investigative reporters in the United States. I won't mention names, but whose attitude toward the media is much more cynical than mine. In fact, they regard the media as a sham, and they know and they consciously talk about how they try to play it like a violin. If they see a little opening, they'll try to squeeze something in that ordinarily wouldn't make it through. And it's perfectly true that I'm sure you're speaking for the majority of journalists who are trained, have it driven into their heads that this is a crusading profession, adversarial, we stand up against power, a very self-serving view. On the other hand, in my opinion, I hate to make a value judgment, but the better journalists, and in fact the ones who are often regarded as the best journalists, have quite a different picture, and I think a very realistic one.
How can you know that I'm self-censoring? How can you know that
you're
journalists
self-censoring? I'm sure you believe everything you're saying. But what I'm saying is if you believe something different, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting.
Especially that last quip. I want you to think about that and apply it to Hasan Piker. I want you to think about how this might explain why Hasan Piker has only been getting more and more mainstream media penetration, why he's getting profiled more and more, and whether there is an incentive for him to, quote-unquote, self-censor or to even regulate his own genuinely held beliefs, in which they give him reasons to do so. Like, he's learning right now. He doesn't go too far on certain issues, or he at least tries to direct people to certain purported solutions, like Democratic Party entryism, for example, which he loves. Look at his support for Zoran right now, which in 5 years isn't going to age very well, mark my fucking words. Provided that he keeps within those sorts of limits, they will give him these sorts of rewards. That is mainstream media penetration, more celebrity, potentially money, more fame, blah, blah, blah. In the same way that, if you're a journalist who spreads like the imperialist neoliberal status quo narrative, you have like every incentive to keep doing that, and they select you not because they're telling you what to say, but because you say what they already wanted you to say. This applies to everyone. You can apply it to Chomsky himself. Ask the question of why was Chomsky, despite supposedly being an anti-system radical, such a mainstream media mainstay for such a long time? There has to be something there, right? With Hasan, it's even more obvious. Hasan is becoming more and more and more incentivized by the attention that he's getting from the mainstream media to self-regulate. It's similar to training a dog. We're all animals, we're all beasts. If you train Hasan to believe that as long as he keeps advocating for, say, Democratic Party entryism or whatever it is that's making them comfortable enough to do this with him, he gets these interviews, he gets profiled in the NYT and GQ or whatever, he will self-regulate so that he gets more of these profiles, more of this mainstream media penetration. Eventually, he's going to make some debate appearances on CNN or something. It's going to go further and further and further. If you think he or you are immune to this stuff, you're totally and completely wrong. We're watching someone basically be groomed by the mainstream media in real time. This is just the beginning of it. He might not even be noticing it, though I have to wonder how it's even possible, why you are suddenly like getting increasing mainstream media attention and they're normalizing you and stuff like that. That would make me wonder whether what I'm doing is in some way useful to them, or whether they have like aspirations for me that I perhaps am not that conscious of. It starts the same in every way. I'm sure Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez actually thought that she was a crusader out to break the Democratic Party norms regarding foreign policy and stuff like that in the beginning. Look where she is now. I'm sure all the journalists who got subsumed by the system started out thinking that they were going to join the New York Times and be heterodox and really challenge power, and look where they are now. And I'm sure Hasan Piker genuinely thinks that he's doing what's right for anti-Zionism or whatever. But then look where he's going to be in 5 years. Do you think he's more likely to be like trying to lead people to a burgeoning third party that is finally making, say, this is, obviously hypothetical, this probably isn't going to happen, you're Americans, you don't do shit, but like a burgeoning third party that's actually making inroads? Or do you think he's going to be supporting the next iteration of AOC Zoran? I think he's going to be doing the second one. And I think he's going to be doing that after many more profiles, not just profiles anymore. They'll let him write an opinion piece. They'll bring him on to CNN every now and again. That sort of thing. He's being groomed. And that is why he's, whether he realizes it or not, that is why he's inviting someone like Matt Duss onto his stream. Because inviting like a DC foreign policy guy, Zionist no less, is what you do when you are in the mainstream, when you're trying to curry favor with the mainstream. This is the sort of guy who goes on CNN all the time to rationalize Bernie Sanders' foreign policy positions from a regressive sounding lens. Makes perfect sense that someone who's being groomed for a role that serves the status quo would talk to someone like that. Hasan can realize this now before it's too late, or he can let it happen. I mean, there's plenty of personal benefit to him for this happening. Why wouldn't he let it happen? He'll make a ton of money from it. He'll get really famous. He'll get invited to the fucking Oscars eventually. Why wouldn't he? He's going to be highly incentivized to become, or to at least maintain the role that he already serves rather than to challenge it. He's gonna take the incentives. Get angry at me all you want for pointing out what is really fucking obvious to anyone who understands what's going on here at all. Like anyone with a basic understanding of like materialism, historical materialism, like the basic thesis of manufacturing consent, a book from 40 years ago that like every 14-year-old has read. Like every 14-year-old interested in politics at least. This is very obvious stuff, and I think that some people would even contest it is very worrying just because it's like their favorite streamer who we're talking about here. He can realize what's happening here, or you can just like keep letting them train him like a dog by giving him incentives to act the way they want him to act. Thus far, he has like danced with that tune to a T. So yeah, I don't really expect much here. It's going to be Democratic Party entryism until the end of time. It's going to be vote for the latest new Democrat guy who's totally different to all the other Democrats, who 5 years later is just going to be exactly like all the other Democrats over and over and over again to prevent potential anti-systemic energy from really forming into like a critical mass that could potentially do something different. Or he can surprise me and everyone else by ceasing to allow them to use him. Whatever he is that he wants. Go ahead, Hasan. Make my day by not doing it anymore. I don't think he will, though. And his fans will be fucking so angry at this video. They're going to call this drama. They're going to do everything possible except actually deal with the substance of what I'm saying. Just because people follow him, and it's not just him, it's everyone else, but people follow YouTube personalities, the same way they follow like mainstream musical personalities, like Taylor Swift, for example. Hasan is the Taylor Swift to a significantly less amount of people that Taylor Swift is the Taylor Swift to, but he is nonetheless to them like their obsession. And it makes them really uncomfortable to see him criticized in a way that is really uncontestable and just correct. To be clear, I am actually not incentivized to shit on Hasan Piker. For me, like the financial celebrity fame, reputational incentive is for me to align with Hasan Piker and everything and to like leech off him. But I don't do that even though it hurts me because I guess I'm a moron. And I think that as humans, I mean, Israel has been trying to disprove this a lot recently, but I think that as humans, we are generally smarter than like just following the incentive structures like dogs. And I think we can go above that and do better. So I try to, which is why I don't follow the incentive structures, because if I wanted to, I would be like sucking Hasan off to the point that he invites me onto his stream regularly, which to be clear, Hasan does not even have direct contact with me. It's always for a third party because like he really doesn't want to have to talk to me directly. I think I would probably ruin his brain and he'd block me in 2 seconds. Like Hasan always says, like, if I wanted to make money, I'd be doing the right-wing grift. That's bullshit. He has a niche that he is a part of now that he is largely dominant in. He would not make more money by leaving that niche. The right-wing media space is overflowing. There's way less opportunity there. There is a lot of room for someone like him, especially given that he still remains within the bounds, not just of what's allowed or what's considered, acceptable to the mainstream Democratic Party, but also Twitch, The fact that he doesn't move to YouTube is very telling. He cares more about like maintaining his Twitch platform and perhaps the money that it makes for him than he does about, say, multi-streaming to YouTube, which doesn't have any rules against multi-streaming. And YouTube is a much bigger audience as well. So there's something going on behind the scenes there. Not just a much bigger audience, but has much laxer rules. You can say way more on YouTube. You can say Zionists on YouTube. I have to ask questions about what's going on there as well. There's incentive structures that everyone, has to abide by. Like, I have incentive structures to not, for example, violate the YouTube terms of service because I'd get kicked off the platform, no more money. But they are nonetheless way more permissible than Twitch's. So you have to ask the question, why does he remain on Twitch? YouTube gets way more viewers, especially for politics. Why the fuck is he on a gaming platform? It's incomprehensible. Just another question that we need to ask. Will Hasan realize what's going on here? Or will he not care? I don't know. He's just going to ignore this video. He's going to ignore that I ever talked about this. He's going to call me crazy or whatever. As long as he gets to do a bathtub photo shoot for GQ, I think he cares way more about that than any of his espoused politics. He may care about them at least a bit, genuinely, but not enough to really think about what is going on with, like, these mainstream media outlets suddenly being very interested in him. He's very much incentivized not to ask questions about that and what they might indicate regarding his overall stance.